Good day. Portia Simpson Miller, former Prime Minister, is in the news as we continue to hear about our Jamaican students and their escape from Ukraine, while the country responds to an exposed, shocking case of poverty and distress of a family in Guys Hill. That's all in this week's Frankly Speaking podcast. So let's begin with the Sunday newspapers for March 6. The Gleaner's news section scores big this week with a story on former Prime Minister Portia Simpson Miller, who was dropped out of public view altogether and about whom there is much speculation. Now, nothing from Portia is a story about Trafigura. It's not about her health at all. The health of the only woman to have served as Prime Minister of Jamaica. It's about her unlikely appearance in court regarding the Trafigura scandal that is scheduled to be heard starting Monday, March 7. It's about the long sought after details in the matter of the circumstances of the People's National Party receiving €466,000 from Dutch company Trafigura Beheer, which then had an oil lifting contract with Jamaica. In this lead story by Barbara Gale and Liveran Barrett, the Gleaner says, quote, legal sources had earlier told the Sunday Gleaner that the former Prime Minister would not appear because of an illness that is likely to be revealed in the hearing tomorrow, meaning Monday, end quote. And Bert Samuels, representing 5 former PNP bigwigs, including Mrs. Simpson Miller and former Chairman Bobby Pickersgill, confirmed that Mrs. Simpson Miller would not be appearing. Now, also in the Sunday Gleaner, there are 2 well-written, hefty features by Erica Virtue on powerful women in Jamaica. The hardworking, fearless, and self-effacing Auditor General Pamela Monroe Ellis and Scotiabank's top boss, Audrey Tugwell Henry, are featured. There is good reporting too by Caroline Cooper in her column on some underreported goings-on at the beach in Discovery Bay. Now, the Sunday Observer can't get over the bombs as its page 1 lead story of the paper. It's a story by Romardo Lyons on a Jamaican student still living with the sound of bombs despite leaving Ukraine and getting home. The story takes us to the harrowing journey of some of the students out of Ukraine. Lyons takes us to the front lines in this story inside Ukraine and students now out of Ukraine. The paper also gives us one of those stories where a citizen seems gouged by a utility company, this time the NWC. It's the kind of experience that's too common in Jamaica about utility providers. In the same paper, The Observer, H.G. Helps says low polling Mark Golding scored in his action in response to the travail of Jamaican students in the Ukraine, and also with that Guys Hill High schoolboy, Delano Tucker. And that boy's plight and poverty are the subject of this week's Frankly Speaking. Frankly speaking, for me, the story of the week was the well-produced video showing the awful conditions in which a schoolboy, Delano Tucker, his sister, and his parents live in St. Catherine. The story of the young man, with his positive, triumphal attitude, tugged at the hearts of many Jamaicans at home and abroad. Frankly speaking, some felt ashamed by it, and others were shocked that any Jamaican could live in these conditions in 2022. They were shocked by the outside kitchen with wood fireplace and without a stove, shocked or moved by an outside toilet and pail inside to be emptied in the morning. On top of that, the sad reality of teenagers, male and female, sleeping on the same bed in a room with their parents on another bed, and the hardships just getting by with the basics from day to day. The nation has reacted, frankly speaking, mostly with shock that has moved some, including our brothers and sisters overseas, to go into their pockets to help the young man and his family. People from all over Jamaica took the time and journeyed to Guys Hill to help out. Frankly speaking, the Tucker family members are the beneficiaries of an outpouring of love and compassion and generosity from Jamaicans pulling together as we so often do. It should escape no one that among the many gifts, cash and kind, arrangements have been put in place for Delano to go to college after the end of high school at Guys Hill High to help him stand up. Truth is, frankly speaking, the conditions of that family are not as isolated as we may think, and some of my close friends and colleagues tell me they can each show me several homes where conditions are similar to and worse than described in the video, in rural and urban settings. Indeed, the Member of Parliament for the constituency where the Tuckers live, Karen Morrison, says, frankly speaking, some 70% of the households in the constituency are in a similar state to the family, over which we are now also distressed. And that's the problem. Frankly speaking, how can Jamaica, so far on after the attainment of political independence, have so large a number of people living in these awful conditions? And, even more importantly, what is going to be done? What structural changes to our economy? What empowerment of people will make these circumstances very rare and isolated? Frankly speaking, I don't have the answers. Do you? Please share your ideas with me at this Frankly Speaking podcast. Now, to Jamaican perspectives. So last week, author and educator Elkanah Rule took us back to the hardships of the decade or so after World War II. It was within days that my mind was dragged back to the interview with him about a time so many decades past because of the video with the Tuckers about hardships many hope have long passed. I went back to Mr. Rule to expand on some of the markers of poverty, the conditions of the poor in the mid-1950s that he mentioned in that interview. Here again is Elkanah Rule, looking back at the poverty of the time. He starts with drawers, underwear made from flour bag at the time.
We call them underclothes now, but nobody hardly used that name in those times. They use, for the female as well as the male, they use the name drawers. How you differentiated them? One was longer than the other. The male drawers was longer than the female's drawers, and it had a button to secure the waist. Now the female own had an opening to insert what was called a drawstring. Well, unfortunately, sometimes some of these drawstring gave way at very inconvenient spots, and then you would know the result. Now, material used for making these underclothes was flour bags or calico, and on occasion calicos were used. Well, how they procured the flour bag, they had to order it from the shopkeepers because there was not a great sale of flour to that extent. So somebody who wanted a flour bag would have to order it well in advance. And there was poverty around. There was not flush toilets around. No, not a single flush toilet was in the community. There were board toilets, wattle toilets. But most people didn't have any, and they had to make other arrangement. And this did not go down easy with the public health inspector. As a matter of fact, nobody called him a public health inspector because he visited all the homes to make sure that they had latrines. They're not even called them toilets in those days. they call them latrines. So he would visit the homes on occasion in the community to see if these latrines were in order. So nobody knew him as public health inspector. Everybody called him latrine man. If a person was walking on the road and saw one of these public health inspectors coming through the district, he would yell out loudly to warn the other members of latrine man come, latrine man come. So by the time the latrine man reached the individual homes, all the people would gone to hide because they were afraid because they could be summoned to court for not providing these sanitary facilities for themselves.
That's Elkanah Rule, looking at poverty in the post-war decade of the 50s. Now, to crosstalk. Desmond Richards is up first on the Get Every Illegal Gun campaign.
The police and other agencies of the state are to be commended for taking the fight to the criminal underworld, seizing over 160 illegal weapons and several thousand rounds of ammunition since the start of the year. Here is evidence that the Get Every Illegal Gun campaign is working to weaken the criminals, which will stop the wanton shedding of blood in the country. While we celebrate, it's far too early to drop our guards as we are dealing with a deep-rooted problem, well-funded, organized, and supported by influential persons, including agents of the state. As I pointed out in the past, the police have been successful taking illegal guns off our streets, and this is not ancient history. Early 2021, the police reported a 23% increase in the seizures of illegal weapons when compared to the corresponding period, 2020. There was a 92% increase in the seizures of deadly assault rifles and significant increases of other caliber weapons during the same period. Yet over 1,000 Jamaicans were murdered by the gun. Since the start of this year, the security forces have seized over 160 deadly weapons. Therefore, it is clear that criminals and their allies have an everlasting supply chain, and we must focus on finding and shutting them down. Special operations squads formed over the years have been working. Up to 1999, Operation Ardent was one of 13 police squads formed since 1976, the year of a state of emergency was declared in Jamaica. Others were Echo Squad, Ranger Squad, Eradication Squad, Era 4 Task Force, Anti-Crime Investigative Detachment, Operation Crest, and many others. While the government has announced tougher legislation to fight crimes, while stepping up the intelligence gathering capacity of the force. These should include laws to send state agents and the bigwigs assisting and facilitating their deadly operation into exile for a very long time.
That's Desmond Richards, journalist and businessman. Now, here's my take on the developments in the Get Every Illegal Gun campaign. We must all thank the police and commend them and the agencies working with them, including Jamaica Customs, for the big hauls of illegal guns and ammunition they have been taking from the street. Just in the last 3 weeks, they have found guns hidden in different packages, even television sets, in warehouses at Sangster International Airport, a warehouse near Montego Bay Port, and one at Bustamante Drive, Kingston, just Friday. That's in addition to the number dug up at Stadium East. Great achievement, police. Two things detain me, however: the lack of arrests and convictions of people responsible for the guns and the apparent failure of the U.S. authorities to help in identifying the senders. It's been going on for too long. The problem is, yes, we have removed nearly 170 guns off the streets since the start of the year. Each gun could kill multiple times. But how many have got onto the streets in that time? 200? 2,000? We do not know. I wholeheartedly support the Get Every Illegal Gun campaign. Give the security forces all the support we can. Tell them what you know as they work to a better time when they start to break the back of the supply chain of guns and bullets coming to Jamaica, where we don't make guns. Now looking ahead. Full face-to-face classes start at almost all Jamaican schools this week, and it's not too soon. Thanks to the hard-working Ministry of Education team and the Minister, and to the school administrators and parents, we just look for your support. Now it's nearly 2 years since mid-March 2020 when schools at all levels and types were shut down following the detection and confirmation of the first COVID-19 case here. Let's help to keep the children safe and assist their progress after a huge learning loss event. It's also budget week as Jamaica rises from COVID-19 and faces increased costs that may yet be made worse by Russia's invasion of Ukraine. That's our podcast this week. Please share your opinion with us by sending us a comment on this Frankly Speaking podcast YouTube channel. Please share and subscribe. Until then, I'm Franklin McKnight.